Hello everyone, and welcome back to the final edition of the Grand Prix of the 2021 Corporate Chess League fall season. As always, my name is Caleb Denby, and I will be your host tonight. It's been a wonderful season so far. We've had a lot of exciting games and quite a few turnarounds, namely Edward Jones making a big comeback. Had some unfortunate forfeits in the first week of the Corporate Chess League, but now they are back in action. And why don't we actually see where they and all the other teams stand after, I believe, 4 weeks of play? 5 weeks of play? Something like that. This is week 5. And we have Enterprise standing at the top of the leaderboard going into this final week here. Trailing them is Worldwide Technology and Edward Jones trying to complete their comeback here tonight. Following them is Ascension. And those 4 teams have mathematically qualified themselves for the Final Four. So unfortunately for Bayer and Doherty, they made a great showing here in the 2021 season, but this is the last we will see of them tonight as they are unable to qualify for the Final Four championships happening next week. That being said, there's a lot to play for here tonight, namely bragging rights. These guys, they're not going to be happy just qualifying for the Final Four. They want to go home, they want to say, I won the Grand Prix, it was never in doubt, I am getting the best seeding in the Final Four. Which, by the way, is not entirely irrelevant. Should a match go down to Armageddon in the Final Four, the higher seed is going to be able to pick their color. So look out for that, higher seed with a slight edge in the event of a tie. That being said, if you think your corporation has what it takes to win the 2021 Corporate Chess League, you yourself can get involved. Do that by reaching out to us at the email on your screen, development@stlouischessclub.org. We would be absolutely thrilled to have more corporations and more teams joining the league. Outside of that, it's going to be a very exciting night tonight. Let's take a quick look at the pairings. We've got Enterprise squaring off against Worldwide Technology in the first round of the night, and Edward Jones is up against Ascension, and that leaves Bayer and Doherty fighting it out as well. And to start with, I believe I want to follow this Enterprise Worldwide Technology match. They're the top 2 scoring teams so far this year, and so it's going to be interesting to see what they can do. So let's see if I can pull up the games. It looks like they are getting underway already. Let's see, Kamikaze Knight, board 1 for Enterprise, has been doing absolutely fantastic in the Corporate Chess League so far. I don't know if he's won every single game he's played, but it's been close. It's been that bad. It's been that bad for his opponents. So let's see if he can get it done here against MJC 3801 for Worldwide Technology. And it looks like we have a Caro Kann on our hands. We have a Caro Kann. So in the Caro, Black develops the light squared bishop outside of the pawn chain to make this piece a little bit more active than normal. And then, in exchange for that, White is building this big center. White has all this central space and is going to try to roll these pawns forward to give Black some problems. In the meanwhile, Black is hoping to eventually play this move c5. Now, what's the point of c5? Black wants to challenge the big center, crack open some files on the queen side, and find counterplay over here. That being said, I don't think Black has done a very good job of organizing the pieces here. As you can see, he has not yet played this move c5, and on move 11 now, you kind of needed this move to come just a little bit more quickly for counterplay. Because this pawn is not yet on c5, you see Kamikaze Knight is able to expand out now with this move b4, just totally clamping down on this square. It's going to be hard for Black to find that counterplay that he needs to stay in the game. If I'm White, I'm feeling very, very comfortable here. Play something like Knight b3, as Kamikaze Knight does. After takes, takes. The a file is not going to be too much. White can also play a5, and just it's dark square domination all over the chessboard for Kamikaze Knight. Not how I like to see my beloved Caro Kann going. Okay, but we'll let MJC try and worm his way out of this one. Let's take a look at the game between Moneyballin and DV Dutch. Moneyballin, of course, playing for Enterprise, DV Dutch playing for Worldwide Technology, and neither player has an accurate chess.com rating. No way is DV Dutch actually 1100 strength. no way is Moneyballin actually 1400 strength. If I had to guess, I think both of these players are around 1600 over the board. So what's going on in this game? We have a Benko declined, it looks like. Very interesting. So the Benko Gambit, of course, black quickly fights for these dark squares in the center, allows white to take extra space, but then very immediately challenges this central pawn. This c pawn defends the pawn on d5. Black offers up an entire free pawn on the queen side, just to weaken this d5 pawn a little bit. Of course, if the c pawn were to capture, the d pawn is going to be a little bit weaker, and black is going to play for some open files on the queen side. White actually declines this, though, allowing black to capture a pawn for free on c4, but white is saying he's going to get this pawn back in good time. We get e4, d6. White could actually capture this pawn already, but instead goes for e5, opening things up very, very early on. D takes, knight takes, bishop g7, queen a4 is check, and now bishop d7, and that's where we stand at the moment. Interesting stuff by Moneyballin. Potentially this line might be working out for him, but in general, it's not such a good idea to try and open things up so quickly when you're actually the one behind on development here. You see, black is able to castle in just one move. It's going to take white a couple moves to castle, and because of that, all of these open lines might actually come back to hurt Moneyballin here. So we'll see what happens. We have bishop d7 now, hitting this queen on c4, or on a4, so queen takes c4 is played. Now if I'm black, I just want to castle my king, and then I'm going to let the position speak for itself. You know, I've got this bishop here on g7. Thanks to my opponent, this line is now wide open, raking down the board, and black is going to be playing with some very, very active pieces. In the meantime, though, you know, the c pawn is a c pawn. White, not quite that greedy, though, does play bishop e2, does prepare to castle his own king. I might have just preferred to see him do all of this before playing this e5 break, before ripping things open. Okay, queen b6 now is going to defend the pawn on c5. And if I'm white, I'm probably just thinking about castling. And at the end of the day, you know, I think white might have gotten away with it. Again, maybe it was all working from the start. It just looked a little bit risky. But now, you know, white's king is also going to be castled. Black still has one or two tempi to make something happen. But if nothing happens here, we've got some very active pieces for white. This d5 pawn hampers black's development. This queen on c4 applies a nice little bit of pressure to this pawn on c5. And white might be doing well. White might be doing well. And yes, of course, hello to everyone watching in the YouTube chats. And oh my goodness, what is this? What is this, DV Dutch? What is this? Knight a6. Knight a6, not so good. Loses a piece to Moneyballin. So looking good for Enterprise now. And you know, it's easy to write knight a6 off as a blunder, but I do want to give credit to Moneyballin here. You know, a blunder like knight a6 is not going to happen if your opponent has easy, natural developing moves. So inducing blunders by making it difficult to develop is something worth mentioning. So DV Dutch just going to be down a piece now. So looking good for Enterprise on this board. Let's take a look at board 3, which is going to be Kenjalum, I believe, if I can find that game. Maybe I can't find that game. Kenjalum versus Sweetman. And oh my, Sweetman is not online. Perhaps that game never got started. Rather unfortunate. So that is not looking very good for Worldwide Technology. Although I do see some action on our pairing spreadsheet. Perhaps they are getting connected now, and that game is going to get underway. In the meantime, though, that brings us to board 4, which is going to be 21 gigawatts for Enterprise up against Derek for free for Worldwide Technology. And what a position we have here. So looks like Black's F-pawn went missing. How did Black's F-pawn go missing? He put it on F5. So F5, of course, a very aggressive move, but it is going to lead to some very long-term weaknesses on this diagonal. So because of this F5 move, we're going to see that what happened in the game? Oh, just checkmate immediately. Turns out those long-term weaknesses became very short-term weaknesses because the game just ended. But again, credit where credit's due. These are not just super simple blunders. They are induced by the opponents. When you're in a tough position, it's really easy to slip up and make a bad blunder. When you have a great position, it's not going to happen quite as often. So F5 making a few too many light squared weaknesses, I think, and that's what led to Derek for free taking home that win. And with that, Worldwide Technology is off to a lead in the match, winning 1-0. Let's check back in on board 1, see how this game is developed. We had a rather awkward-looking Caro-Kann when we last left it. We left it around this time when White played this move, Knight B3. I highlighted all the dark squares and said White was doing well. Then we get Knight F5, a trade of these pieces, and F4 by White. Interesting. Ooh, and Bishop G4. I actually hate this move. Oh, and Bishop E4. Oh my gosh. Okay, neither player, I think, is making much sense here. Okay, so one of the, how do I explain this? So the bishop in the Caro-Kann is a very, very important piece. It's sort of the heart of the position, has to deal with this bishop. So on the one hand, it's an active piece raking down this diagonal outside the pawn chain. On the other hand, when you lock your bishop outside the pawn chain, it occasionally can run into some trouble. It can run short on squares, and it's a little bit more vulnerable to attack. So oftentimes in the Caro-Kann, you'll see White play a move like G4 and start expanding on the king side because he's able to gain a lot of time against this bishop outside the pawn chain. So something like G4 hits the bishop, forces it to a square like E4. You can even drop the knight back to D2, try and induce the bishop back, and then hit black with F5. Now that's like the best case scenario, but that is sort of the main idea in the position. And then after we've gained a ton of tempi against this bishop, we've kicked it all over the board, maybe then we'll consider trading off these bishops, but only after we get all those advantages. And so after bishop G4, as black, I would be very tempted to just accept this trade of these bishops, get those bishops off the board so that White doesn't gain all this time. But instead, neither player does what I want them to do, which is interesting. Okay, F6, F5 is how this game went, and then B5 does allow C5 by black. I would have liked to see White hold off on this B5 move for as long as possible, because now that after C5 is played, we are going to see just a few things open up here, and H6 can't be right. So it looks like the complications are still going to be favoring White in this position. If I'm not miscounting, this is going to be an extra piece. So what went wrong here? What went wrong? After C5, Kamikaze Knight struck while the iron was hot with this move C4. I think that's definitely the way to go. And then unfortunately here, I think takes on C4 was just a little bit too careless. I do believe black needed to be the one to strike first with C takes D4 instead. Because after this line, we see that after rook c1, it's just a little bit awkward here for black to try and resolve this tension. And White was able to make a threat and resolve the tension by winning a piece. Okay, so looking good for Kamikaze Knight now, but missing some nuances in the Caro-Kann there. Still no sign of Sweetman, by the way. So Worldwide Technology might be getting a double forfeit here in just a moment. Ooh, and what is this? I'm looking at the pairing / score sheet, and it looks like Ascension is off to an early lead with Davinators defeating board 1 for Edward Jones, Vishal Bardwaj. So that's an interesting start over there. I am going to leave this Kamikaze Knight game now. We can check back in briefly on Moneyballin. Yep, Moneyballin's still up a piece, still looks good. And so it looks like Enterprise is definitely off to a very good start here, despite dropping that board 4 game against Derek for free. Okay, why don't we move on over to this Edward Jones Ascension matchup? Let's take a look here, see what happened in this game between Vishal and Davinators. So Vishal, wait, what is this? He got checkmated. Oh my goodness. Vishal here just up a full rook. Was getting checked all over the board. Oh my goodness. Okay, what a game. So we had knight takes f2 winning in exchange. And then after queen f7, queen f6, we see that white is able to flush out this black king one way or another with knight f7. And then queen h6 sacrifices the knight as well. But then at the end of the day, okay, I think white missed an opportunity here with rook e6. Instead he goes queen e6, and we shuffle back and forth for a while. Eventually rook g3 hits. Vishal does not choose to sacrifice back, tries to keep the extra material. And then, okay, chess.com has taken that game out of my hands. But it looks like the king ran over to the queen's side and was eventually checkmated over there. What a crazy, crazy game for Davinators to go off to an early lead. Really wild stuff. Let's see how they're doing in the rematch. Of course, everybody plays 2 games per round here, one with black and one with white. Okay, so let's see what's going on. Vishal, hoping to recover, chooses a slightly more conservative opening, puts a pawn in the center, develops the king's side, keeps his king safe, as opposed to last game. And then we're going to end up with c3 here, which is a rather interesting idea. White is trying to support the d4 pawn in order to liberate his e pawn to jump right out to e4. More of a King's Indian attack style of play. If I can catch back up, okay, we get a3 and then actually c4. So Vishal perhaps realizes that black has good control over the e4 square, shifts his game plan to the c4 break instead. And then we get takes knight e5, and yeah, rook b8 doesn't feel like the correct way to answer this. And now all of a sudden, Vishal is taking over the board. Yeah, winning a piece with this tactic. This is a tactic that shows up at pretty much all levels of chess, but when you develop all your pieces to the most natural squares, it turns out that e4 attacks a piece, and then e5 forks 2 other pieces. One of the most common tactics in chess. But that tactic, good enough here to win a piece, and now Vishal already is just launching down the board on the king's side. Bishop d3 is a clever way to save the bishop, but that's all it does. If white were to take, black can take back, but white is still going to have this extra bishop. So looking good for Vishal, making his big comeback. Let's see what's going on board 2 between Fishers of Men and S. Gilmore. We've got Fishers of Men with the black pieces here, and another sort of locked up position going on. So if I can count the pawns, if I'm not mistaken, both sides have all 8 of their pawns remaining. That doesn't happen too often. Although white's structure is looking a little bit more fractured than black's. So what's going on in this position? We have the C and the D pawns in tension. It's always a good idea to look at that area where the pawns are attacking each other. That's where a lot of the action is going to take place. That's where things are going to open up. And that's usually what the position centers around. So what's going on here? Well, at any moment, black could take opening up this bishop on the long diagonal, but black is probably hesitant to do that because that's going to activate white's bishop as well along this diagonal, opposing the king and attacking this weak pawn on e6. Conversely, white would be able to take on d5 to open up this bishop, but that's going to allow black's bishop to control both of these very important diagonals. And so that's why we see neither player willing to break the tension just yet. Instead, black's idea is to jump out to queen a4, try and poke at some of these pawns on the queen side, and find an advantage that way. Now, if you play the simple move king b1, perhaps black is very seriously considering taking this pawn on c4. Now that the queen is here for backup, white's bishop not going to be able to activate, and black's bishop is going to be the one that is springing to life. So we do see king b1. Now I'm very interested to see if black will decide to take on c4. The other reason that black might be hesitant is it does open up this file for the rook as well, and you could argue that that is going to be a pretty big benefit for white here. So that's the decision Fishers of Men is faced with. Does he open it up or does he keep it closed? If he keeps it closed, Play a simple move, rook d8, rook d7, something like that. Even bishop a6 has some ideas, although it doesn't work immediately. So plenty of options here for Fishers of Men, and I want to see what he is going to choose. Hello to Anthony in the chat room as well. Thank you for joining. Understandably, Fishers of Men is taking just a minute here. And he does! He opens it up! So the fireworks are coming now. Will we see rook d6, planting this rook in black's face, again attacking this major weakness in the white camp. And then after rook d6, will we see bishop e4 check, queen c2, these kinds of ideas. It's going to be some action here now that things have finally opened up. Yeah, rook d6 comes on the board. I'm expecting bishop e4 check just to activate that bishop. Bishop d5 looks sort of artificially very strong, but I think bishop f3 is going to be enough. If you try some kind of c3 tactic, I'm just going to take your bishop. Oh, okay, so this is what Fishers of Men goes for, and this does make some very frightening looking threats. But I do think that bishop f3 is the way to go here. And after bishop f3, I think white is potentially even getting the better side of things. Bishop f3, I think black actually is going to have to just give up on all these tactics, play a move like rook d7, and try and make sure he isn't going to be any worse. Just to show you what I'm thinking, so bishop f3, rook d7, maybe he can take on d5, can take back with the pawn, and then my rook on d7 sort of defends my pawn on d5, which is much needed. Okay, instead we see bishop to d1. I don't think this spoils anything for white. Black can move the queen out of the way. To b4, a5 would make a lot of sense. And then white can still come out with this move, bishop f3. White can still play this move. In the meantime, we are getting some more results in. And yeah, Edward Jones, as they often do, is surging against Ascension. So Vishal doing well in his game after dropping game 1 to Davinators of Ascension. And now Justini Linguini and Alex Kurford getting it done on boards 3 and 4 for Edward Jones. So Edward Jones now does officially take the lead. By the way, Kamikaze Knight and Moneyballin both got the job done against their opponents as expected. They were both up a piece, so no surprise that they ended up taking home the full points. In the meantime, Sweetman has arrived on the scene. Sweetman is here. Finally, his game against Kenjalum is underway. So no forfeits for Worldwide Technology, thankfully. Sweetman shows up just in the nick of time and has a great position nonetheless. So if Sweetman is able to win this game, we will have a tied match in the Enterprise versus Worldwide Technology duel. I don't want to lose sight of this, though, because I think this is very interesting. So wow, g4 is white's choice. I was worried that white might get ambitious like this, because now the c3 idea just feels like it's creating so many weaknesses in the white camp. You can play b takes c3, trying to defend laterally, but then stuff like queen d3 check in. Oh, queen b7. What is queen b7? I thought bishop d5 was your attacking chance to break in with c3. I thought Fishers of Men was coming after the guy, but instead he goes more passive with queen to b7. I don't like this idea. I don't like this idea at all. And in the meantime, I think we have some background music starting. So there is a concert going on above us, so you may hear some interesting things here tonight during the Corporate Chess League. Okay, so with that in mind, I think Gilmore is now on the upper side of things with this strong passed e5 pawn, and black's piece is heading in the wrong direction. So that's where I'll leave this one. Let's check back in on Kenjalum versus Sweetman. And I look away for 2 seconds, and some pieces drop off the board. Oh no, how long has white been down a rook? Okay, I didn't even realize. Okay, white has been down a rook for a while. So maybe this game's not so interesting, because an extra rook is going to be good enough for Sweetman. So with that, I can say that Worldwide Technology is very likely tying this match against Enterprise. Is this a sign of things to come? I'm not so sure. What I do know is that if anybody is going to defeat Enterprise, they need to do something about Kamikaze Knight. This guy just wins every game he plays in the Corporate Chess League. It's honestly, it's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed, other Corporate Chess League teams. You can't just let Kamikaze Knight roll over you guys like this. Somebody's got to take him out. Somebody has got to take him out. So we get Queen G1, King C2. And this position is still, it's got some life in it still. I know black is up the exchange, but this knight on f6 is a very, very scary piece. And there's even weird moves like knight to h7 that I'm considering here. Because the black queen is just a little bit offside, a little bit far away from the black king, if we can cut off this king's escape route through f8, I might be able to get some interesting, at least perpetuals, against this black king. The rook is not going to be enough to stop the queen and the knight. So we see queen b7 first. I was worried that white might go for this because now I do believe that black's king is going to be escaping through f8. I wanted to stop that if at all possible. Definitely it's not over yet though. Knight h7 is still in this position, but now I think that the best white is hoping for is going to be some kind of a draw. And that's if he's fortunate enough to not get checkmated in the interim. For example, if I go knight h7, king to g8, yeah, I'm honestly not even seeing the draw. If you go knight f6, king h8, and I am escaping. I am escaping. Okay, queen c7 instead. Oh, and so this is the perpetual that white is going for here. Not against the king, but actually against the rook. Very interesting idea. I think we're going to see these pieces shuffle back and forth between a8 and d8 and c7 and b7. And that might be enough to draw the game. In the meantime, Kamikaze Knight at any moment can insert a flurry of checks. White should be careful not to step to the third rank, otherwise the pawns start falling with check. But maybe just a draw? Maybe just a draw? I'm not so sure. We'll stick with this one for a while, because this is going to be a big game. If Kamikaze Knight is able to, or if MJC is able to stop Kamikaze Knight here, hold him at least to a draw, that gives his team good chances to come back and win this match. By the way, on board for 21 Gigawatts and Derek for Free drew their second game, so no change in the standings there. And we did see Fishers of Men and S. Gilmore actually draw that game that I was looking at. That looked quite interesting. Actually, no, I think that was the first game they played. Yeah, they are still well underway, and just briefly looking at it, it looks like white is checkmated. Hold on, we got to check this out. What happened here? I was going to say I thought white is doing well, and then we have white sacrificing a rook for no apparent reason. Why did we sacrifice a full rook for no reason? I don't understand. I don't understand. It's checkmates. It's just going to be checkmate now. Just queen d5. This is very hard to stop, and your attack against the black king is going nowhere. So just to give you some words of wisdom here, Gary Kasparov has kind of a rule. Actually, there's a lot of different rules that people have made up for when you can sacrifice. But if you kind of cut the board into fourths and you have a massive advantage in material on one side of the board, that's when you can attack. But here, all of black's pieces are very ready to come back to the king's side to help defend. And so this sacrifice just isn't going to make any sense. Just isn't going to make any sense. So unforced error by S. Gilmore here, and I think that's going to cost him the game, barring any miracles with the pawn promoting here. And even if the pawn promotes here, 25 seconds on the clock is going to be tough. Okay, so we'll leave that in the hands of Fishers of Men for Edward Jones, and we'll come back to this game where, yeah, I really don't like this decision by white. I think that white is definitely fighting for a draw here and not anymore. So I think queen b7 was the way to go. You just want to shuffle back and forth, get that repetition, make Kamikaze Knight be the one to deviate if he does want to avoid the draw. Because here, I mean, you're just down in exchange, and you're not checkmating this king. Okay, running the king all the way to the edge also probably not going to be advised. Now the queen is going to come in, and I think you're very close to checkmated. You're very, very close to checkmated, and I'm not even sure, how you continue here. Like at any moment, just rook c8, and the two major pieces will checkmate the white king. At any moment, rook c8 could come. Okay, we get queen d3 check first. Now queen c2 I'm anticipating. Maybe just rook c8. I think both are fine. And your checks are going nowhere. You have one check, knight h5. I play king h8. I'm entirely safe. And you are busted. Just busted. So Kamikaze Knight gets it done again. Another 2-0 win for Kamikaze Knight. As always, performing strongly in this corporate chess league. That leaves the fate of the match in the hands of Moneyballin and DV Dutch, along with Kenjalum and Sweetman. So let's check in on those games. We've got DV Dutch versus Moneyballin. Saw DV Dutch make an unfortunate blunder in the Benko Gambit last round. But here we see DV Dutch again actually down a piece. So not going great again. This bishop is actually going to make a big difference as well. This bishop's coming into f4 and delivering checkmate on h2. So what can white do about it? How do you stop checkmate? Maybe you have to play this move queen f3, just trade off the queens. Instead, DV Dutch understandably does not want to trade off the queens, but now just bishop f4, and that's going to be the end of the game. So with that, is that enough to just straight win the match? That is going to bump up Enterprise's score likely to 4.5 points, which is enough to win the match. So assuming no surprises in the Kamikaze Knight MJC game and no surprises here, Enterprise will be defeating Worldwide Technology and securing those extra Grand Prix points. Hello to those of you in the chat. Johnny Spin, Mathis, Rival. Thank you for joining all the way from France. Hello, hello. Okay, so with that, I am going to leave this Enterprise Worldwide Technology matchup because I think things have just fully been decided there. The only match where there is still some controversy is going to be Bayer versus Doherty, where they are coming down to the wire. It's all coming down to this final game between I Love Legos 2 and Cross to PJ. If I Love Legos 2 is able to win, he will secure a tie for Doherty. If Bayer wants to win, then they need a half point out of Cross to PJ. And okay, I just looked at the board, and black has more rooks. So it does look like Bayer is going to get it done here with their match against Doherty. Yeah, c6. Black is super solid. No way in for the white pieces. White does have some scary looking pawns, but all of the pieces are working together. Good coordination for black, and so he should be able to hold everything together. Queen e3, this is a nice move. A little defense of h3 and a sneaky little threat of queen takes a7. So not out of the question that I Love Legos 2 could make a comeback in this game, but with only 19 seconds, it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Queen a7, you can get away with queen takes h3 here because you have so many major pieces around your king. You're going to be fine. By the way, queen b8 seems like it's picking up a rook, but after I go king h7, takes, rook takes g4, you actually have to give up your queen right back. And your victory is going to be short-lived. In the meantime, Edward Jones has secured match victory against Ascension. Vishal did get it done in his second game after losing horribly to Davinators in some sort of checkmating king hunt in game 1. And that just leaves Alex Kurford's game left underway. And yeah, actually that line that I was mentioning does appear on the board. Black now up a queen for a rook, and actually is just able to take everything. Or fork the king and rook immediately. Okay, I Love Legos 2 flags, and with that, Bayer secures their match victory as well. That leaves just this two games underway. We have Alex Kurford here with the white pieces, and quite a few white pieces against Oak Ave, who does not have many black pieces left. And Alex perhaps being a little bit mean here, not finding checkmate with his extra pieces, and instead is pushing yet another pawn down the board. Okay, we have check and mate. Okay, now it's a little bit harder. Alex, 30 seconds on the clock. Stalemate's not out of the question here. Not out of the question. Okay, check and mate is there again. Okay, now check and mate, or mate. Yeah, mate is good. Alex wins that game. And that brings us to the final game of round 1 of the Corporate Chess League, which is going to be between Kenjalum and Sweetman. So unfortunately for Sweetman, his team has mathematically lost this round already. But if he's able to win, it will only be lost by a very respectable half point, I think. If they had scored just a half point more on board 4, they would have tied the match, assuming a win out of Sweetman. That being said, assuming a win out of Sweetman is not going to be a guarantee here. Black does seem to have a very good position. Impressive rebounds by a lot of the players in the event here tonight. We saw Vishal losing an unfortunate game and bouncing back to win. Now Kenjalum with a very good looking position after his loss in the first game as well. That being said, it's not all roses for Black here. You are missing a very critical C-pawn that would help defend your entire structure. So there are some loose spots for Black to look out for. This pawn on D5, just a little bit too loose for my liking. And if something were to happen to this pawn, all of a sudden your knight on E4 loses its legs. Its legs get kicked out from underneath it, and it would come tumbling down. It would have to leave its outpost on the E4 square. So definitely a lot to keep track of here for Black. But I do think it's manageable, and if Black does manage everything, he's just got a better position. More active pieces, more space, and better coordination. You see this queen floating out here on H3, this bishop not doing much as well, and this knight's forward hops taken away by this pawn on F6. So good position here for Kenjalum, and we'll stick with it to see if he can manage to convert it. Queen to G2. By the way, I think queen to G4 might be getting your queen trapped to some F5 business, although the story is a little bit more complicated with knight G5 check, so better just to go back to G2, regroup, and stay solid. Best to just stay solid. And yes, hello to Alex in the chats, who just finished up his game against Oak Ave, securing match victory for Edward Jones. And Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I know these Corporate Chess League teams, you guys, you're not happy with just qualifying for the Final Four. You're looking to take Enterprise's top spot here tonight. And so that is what we are keeping an eye on. Let me just take a brief gander at the total Grand Prix standings. After this round, I do believe Edward Jones will leapfrog Worldwide Technology to come into second place. And that puts them definitely within striking distance of taking Enterprise's top spot in round number 2 of tonight. That'll be a match that we definitely want to follow. So yeah, it looks like Enterprise will have something like a 25-point lead over Edward Jones, so it would have to be a blowout for Edward Jones to leapfrog them, but it is definitely doable. They just need to win a lot of games. Not enough to win the match in a close battle. You gotta crush them. Gotta crush them to get it done. Okay, in the meantime, we see Black doubling up on the H-file now, and you can really see the power of this knight on E4. It's keeping, something like 20 points worth of material at bay for White almost single-handedly. Like this knight it's stuck in the way of all of the open lines for White. Nothing to be done about it. A3, and I said nothing to be done about it, but realistically, you probably had to play knight D2 there, just trying to get rid of this piece. Now, the reason why knight D2 wasn't played, White was probably concerned about this rook H2 idea, and rightfully so. So if you can't play knight D2, then you can't get rid of this knight on E4. If you can't get rid of this knight on E4, none of your pieces can play. So that's the dilemma that Kenjalum has backed Sweetman into here. It's going to take some creativity to untangle this one. Honestly, if I'm White here, I'm very, very seriously tempted to just get rid of this stupid knight on E4. Like, how can you play chess stuck behind this knight? How can you play chess like this? And the answer is you can't, which is why Sweetman hasn't made a move. There's just no way to move your pieces here unless you take this knight off the board. You definitely don't want to make this sacrifice as white, but it's a sacrifice of necessity. And yeah, Sweetman does eventually muster up the courage to take that piece off the board. Simply had to be done. Simply had to be done. Okay, now the character of the game is going to change a little bit. You see that this wide open diagonal is where the black king resides. And so white now looking to spring to life, activate all the pieces, use this open E file, and counterattack. In the meanwhile, if black is able to consolidate, secure everything, he will just be up the exchange at the end of the day. Okay, queen to d7. This move feels a little bit funny. Our queen, I think, actually had more options on the c7 square than d7. Maybe Kenjalum's eyeing up this f5 square, but I would rather plant this queen somewhere like c4. You know, look at this square, look at this square, look at these invading opportunities, all in the meanwhile keeping my backwards moves to help defend my king. Also not a huge fan of this rook sitting here on h3. Maybe this is the reason behind queen to d7, just giving this guy a little bit more support. Okay, king f1. Okay, I'm not a fan of this move either. This one just feels very, very strange. Your king is safer on g1 than f1. Queen b5 is check, can take a pawn, can invade. Sort of gives black a second chance here to improve the queen. Queen b5 it is. Rook e2 is going to run into rook e8. I don't care about this rook. I get this rook, and I get my pieces in the game. We'll see if Kenjalum can find it. g4 instead. Okay, this is an attempt at an improvement over my line. He wants to play rook e8, but he doesn't want to hang his rook, so he defends his rook first. And now I fully expect rook e8 to appear on the board. Fully expect rook e8. What else? What else? Okay, so rook e8 is here. White now, I think, has to play some move like bishop to g1. And yeah, again, necessity is the mother of invention, or something like that. Bishop g1. You don't want to play it. It might not occur to you, but when you have to play it, you have to play it. I'm looking at some very funny stuff now. I'm looking at bishop g3, pawn g3, rook g3. If queen takes, there is checkmate, and I think that would be a very beautiful way to finish this game. But I'm not going to put all that on Kenjalum. Bishop takes g3, not the easiest move to find. In the meantime, trading pieces is not the worst idea either. Okay, g5 instead. This one's not my favorite, but Kenjalum is just trying to keep the tension here. He says, your rook is pinned. No reason for me to relieve all of that tension right away. I'm going to get rid of your knight so my rook can come back into the game, and we'll deal with the rest later. Now, the reason why I'm not such a big fan of this move is it is allowing stuff like, wait, never mind. I'm the worst ever. I forgot. Queens move sideways. Hardest rule in chess, queens moving sideways. Even I miss it all the time. So I take it all back. g5 gets my stamp of approval. Seems to be winning a knight and the game, which is very, very good. Not quite as pretty as bishop takes g3, but maybe even a bit better. Maybe even better than bishop takes g3. Okay, knight f3 instead, but this knight is capturable. And takes, loses now to checkmates. If you really want to keep things simple, you can take on e2 now. Just cut out all the complications. I have an extra rook. You have one bishop left on the board. I'm going to be able to win. That's probably the approach I would take at this point. No reason to be fancy and try to checkmate the opponent. Okay, yeah, g4, but again, this feels a little bit too fancy. You can take this. You can just take this, and then you get the same position, except you have fewer g-pawns. Okay, Kenjalum understands his mistake. Just get rid of these pieces. You know, I'm good enough at chess to win with an extra rook. And that is what we're dealing with now. Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you, though. With 2 minutes on the clock, the position was a lot easier with an extra g-pawn. Now, you know, white has 1, 2, 3 pawns for a rook. Obviously, that's not enough. But 3 pawns are 3 pawns, and in time pressure, anything could happen. Maybe you blunder a bishop somewhere, and suddenly your opponent has an exchange in 3 pawns, rather than just 3 pawns for the rook. That being said, though, by all accounts, Kenjalum winning this game, most likely result. Yeah, we see bishop takes h2, the first pawn falls, rook g8, and the second pawn will fall. Pawn number 2. Just bishop d6 instead, also perfectly fine. Okay, rook h3, eyeing up bishop f4 with some of these ideas. Okay, king to e4. Yeah, and so Kenjalum here actually isn't making the most progress. In fact, I would argue that white is getting pretty close to some scary stuff. If we take this guy, take back, b5, b6, looks a little frightening, but the good news for Kenjalum is he's maintaining his clock advantage, so I can't be too upset with him. There's also this move, rook g3, coming, which I think should have been done a long time ago. We need to get rid of this g-pawn so we can focus all of our attention on the other side of the board. So rook g3 I think is a must here, just to get rid of this last pawn, and then you can focus on the other side of the board. You have your own passed pawn on f3, and that's going to allow you to win the game without too many worries. Okay, bishop e5, not a huge fan of this move. Not a huge fan of this move. Every tempo we waste is another step forward for these pawns. Yeah, so black now is just fully committing to trying to stop these pawns, but I feel it slipping. I feel it slipping away here. I'm getting nervous. Okay, please, we need the king. We need the king to help out here. Okay, king e6. This is good. Okay, c7. You can play king d7 now. You can sacrifice potentially, but I'm not even convinced you're winning if you're going to give up the bishop now. Probably check. Oh, he does sacrifice. I'm not convinced that this is a winning position anymore. I'm really not. There's bishop b6. There's bishop f4. Yeah, this one is just a draw now. Amazingly. What play from Sweetman. Oh my god, he sacrifices the rook! Now it is just a draw. Oh, Kenjalum. He's going to want this one back. He's going to want this one back. I thought at least Kenjalum would try to win on time with the rook versus the bishop, just by sort of shuffling around, but instead we get a draw. Wow. What play from Sweetman. So how did this happen? How did this happen? Let me go back through some stuff here and try to explain. So we got from this position where after takes, what black is just completely crushing. We got from here, black lost that g-pawn, won this h-pawn, and then after this move, starting from bishop d6, I think black played a lot of bad moves in a row. And the result of that is that all of the white pawns slowly crept up the board, and the further down those pawns get, the more dangerous they are. You know, when they're sitting on b2 and c3, not so dangerous. When they're on b6 and c7, pretty dangerous pawns. So here, black needed to play urgently, take off this g-pawn, focus on pushing this f-pawn down the board, and then there's no way white can deal with the numerous threats. Instead, we saw a wasted move, a wasted move, a wasted move, a trade, a wasted move number 4, bishop e5, wasted move number 5, rook h1, wasted move number 6, and then 6 wasted moves was enough. And we ended up with a draw. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff that Sweetman was able to save that game. Okay, with that, let me take a gander at our current standings. So, as expected, actually with that draw, Enterprise's lead over Edward Jones is just slightly bigger. We see Enterprise is up, if I can do some math, 25.5 points over Edward Jones. Now, they are paired in our second round of tonight. And if you win the match, you actually get a 20-point bonus towards the Grand Prix. So if Edward Jones beats Enterprise by 6 or more points, they will be our #1 seed heading into the Final Four. If they're unable to do that, Enterprise is going to be our #1 seed. That's definitely what we want to focus on, and we do have games starting to get underway here. Let's take a look. We see Vishal Bhardwaj, the warrior for Edward Jones, who has secured them numerous victories in the Corporate Chess League, up against Kamikaze Knight, the unstoppable force of the Corporate Chess League fall season. He just wins every game. So let's see what happens here. What can Vishal do? against Kamikaze Knight. Okay, we get e5. I expect knight to d5 is the idea here. Interesting opening from Kamikaze Knight. Okay, knight e4, also a good idea. This knight, of course, is pinned, so we are not losing a piece in the opening. And what we're going to see here is that Vishal gets a big center early on, and black is, again, going to try to undermine it with various pawn breaks, playing c5, playing f6, and the like. So knight e4, just bishop d2 to break the pin. But I actually don't really like this now for white. The bishop's pair is the bishop's pair, as they say. The two bishops working very well together to control huge swaths of the board. And it is a nice little advantage to be able to take a bishop with your knight. You know, and as soon as I finish saying that, we see Kamikaze Knight playing bishop takes f3 unprovoked. I really don't like this move. I really don't like this move. This bishop was what was like a masterpiece over here. Look at this bishop on the long diagonal, putting all that pressure, and then you give all of that up just to double some pawns. Not such a big fan. Not such a big fan here for Vishal. Okay, let's see if I can pull up some of the other games. Of course, Fishers of Men is underway against Moneyballin. We have Justini Linguini against Kenjalum. And I don't believe Alex's game against 21 Gigawatts has started just yet. I'm sure they are working on getting underway. So to my point, you see now white's bishop appearing on e4, controlling a large portion of the board. A portion of the board it would not be able to control if a bishop on b7 were still there. f5, though, is a nice move by Kamikaze Knight, trying to undermine this bishop. You would love to play takes on passant, but that's going to activate the black queen as well. Force you to do something like queenside castles to defend the d-pawn, but it's going to be an interesting game. Okay, instead we see bishop takes knight again, and again, I don't like this move. I don't like this move. Bishops are good, knights are bad. Keep your bishops, don't give them up for free. We do see queenside castles anyways, but now, God, what is going on here? There's some c5 idea. Maybe just castles is prudent. We see a3 challenging this bishop, and again, bishop takes knight gets played just because the players hate me, I guess. I'm just kidding, of course. And we'll leave this game for a little bit now, I think. Kamikaze Knight seems to have solidified things, and at the end of the day, he's going to be able to bring a rook to d8, put some pressure on this d4 pawn, and white is under just a little bit of pressure here, although I don't think it's anything too bad. Let's move on to board 2, which is Fishers of Men, with the black pieces against Moneyballin. And what's going on here? As the music is officially underway above me, I don't know how much of that you can hear, but we've got some background music for the Corporate Chess League. Okay, we've got white with the bishop pair. As I was saying, bishops are great, knights are the worst. But what does black have in exchange for it? Well, in exchange for it, white's kingside structure has been a little bit fractured, and you see the black pieces looming just in the area here, looking for an opportunity to jump in and give that white king some trouble. That's why we see white, for the moment, not doing anything crazy like f4, which might allow a knight to jump into g4, just keeping his pawns here, controlling both of these black knights. Instead, he's diverting the attention to the d file. If he can simplify things a little bit, the bishop pair will reign supreme, as they wrote about in the chess books. So rook d7, but you know, these trades are not bad for white at all. The end game is one area where the bishops will truly dominate these knights, just controlling huge parts of a wide open chessboard. The knights are not going to be able to keep up. Okay, knight takes on d7, play rook d1 again, just get the rook to the open file. There are other options, queen e4 for example, and you can get away with this f4 move if you really want to. I would rather do it after something like queen e4 though. Queen e4, does that run into something crazy like f5? I don't think so. I think f5 is a little bit too crazy. Again, always weakens this light square diagonal. Rook d1 is the simple choice, and it's not a bad choice at all. Moneyballin still keeping things under control here. And yeah, not much else to say. Good position for white. We'll see if Moneyballin can continue to manage the weakness around his king and keep these bishops in good position. Let's take a look then at board 3. We've got Justini Linguini up against Kenjalum. And is this true? Did they already play a game? There's no way that's true. That must be a warm-up game that they played. There's no way that Kenjalum has already won a game against Justini Linguini. I refuse to believe it. So what do we have here? We have a big center for white. We have a bishop threatening to be trapped over here on the king side for black. But black, again, castled the king, played responsibly, and having this extra pawn here on the king side is going to give the black king a lot more safety than you might otherwise expect. And that's why after rook e8, I have to say that I think I like black's position here. On the surface level, these pawns look scary for black, but black's done everything right. Castled the king, developed the pieces, and now he's reaping the rewards. Pressure on white's center, and white having to stall the attack because this king is still stuck on e1. Now I'm looking at things like f5 already. Black is able to do things like f5 only because he castled the king so early on. Okay, h6, I think that is a missed opportunity. I think f5 was sort of devastating there for white. No way to keep the e4 pawn under control, and once the e4 pawn goes, then your king is in massive trouble. h6 instead, though, anticipates the h5 threat, gives the bishop a flight square. Not a bad move by any means. Okay, g5. So this move increases the tension to the maximum, but unfortunately, it's provoking the move f5, which I still think is very strong. Very strong. Okay, f5, there's e5. Maybe this is the idea. But against e5, I'm thinking I can just take that guy. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking I can take that guy, rip open the file, and punish you for leaving your king in the center of the board. By the way, if you don't like that line, maybe you'll like bishop takes, knight takes, and then f5 just a bit better when the knight is truly pinned. Okay, the players don't like any of my lines, and they take on g5 and play h5. Yeah, again, I think there were just tactics available for black there. And the reason there are tactics available, white left the king in the center, black didn't, therefore black has all the tactics. With this, though, this is going to give white some opportunity to rectify his mistakes, play something like queen c2, castle queenside, and continue the game. That being said, definitely I prefer black here, just because he's so far ahead in king safety. All right, let's take a look then at board number 4, which is going to be this game between Alex Kurford for Edward Jones and 21 Gigawatts playing for Enterprise. And it is an interesting game on board 4. We do still have some tension in the center, but white has this very nice looking fluid structure going on. The question is, can he hold everything together? The e4 pawn does seem to be a little bit of a weak point here, and black is threatening to simply take, and take. So what can Alex come up with? Maybe just queen f3 defends the pawn. It's simple enough. If you want to get a little bit more tactical, you might have rook d1 here, anticipating takes and takes when the rook would be opposing the enemy queen. Don't think I'm a big fan of it, though, because of these checks that occur on this diagonal. Again, whenever you move this pawn, weakens your king. Checks and tactics are going to be in the air. So queen f3 it is. Queen f3 is simple enough. You take some time off from your big attack that you're trying to set up just to defend your center and enjoy the benefits of that. Okay, Alex does go for rook d1, but now takes, check, and what do you do? What do you do? Or check first. I think you have to play like queen f2 here. Excuse me, sorry. Something like queen f2, and then the e4 pawn is going to fall. King h1, now, now it's getting worse. Now after takes, I don't think you can take back. Otherwise, knight takes and knight f2. So, getting dangerous for Alex here, getting very dangerous. If black were to take on e4, which of course he should, you cannot take that pawn back. You have to push past with something like d4. Otherwise, it is big trouble for white here. We do see takes, and will Alex fall into the trap? Will he fall into the trap? Or is there knight c4? Maybe knight c4 is the idea. Yeah, things are going to get a little bit crazy here. Again, you know, we sort of had a calmer position while the pawns were in tension, but then the second that something gets captured, you see all the tactics start to fly, and all the action going on. These knight f2 threats, these knight c4 threats, everything is suddenly in the air once things open up. So now I do think we have to go back with queen c7 and just allow white to capture on a5. Otherwise, you know, knight d6 is an idea. We can try knight h5, but white's just going to move the queen, and we've only made our problems worse. So queen c7 it is. Queen d8 might technically be the same or similar. Okay, wait, actually queen c7, there's still knight d6. I forgot about this bishop over here. So queen c7, knight d6, and what's going on then? Yeah, I'm honestly not even sure it's that good for white. You know, we're still getting stuff like take on d3. You can take my rook, I'll take back. And knight e4 is still coming into the position and still looks rather frightening. So a lot going on in this game. I kind of want to stick with this one for a while and see what happens when the dust settles. What will happen when the dust settles? Queen b3 is the nice idea for black, responding to the attack on black's bishop with an attack on white's bishop. Now if knight d6, the bishop falls, and yeah, 21 gigawatts, trying to solve all the problems at once here. Let's see if he gets away with it. It feels a little artificial to put this queen on b3. I can start kicking this piece around. Take on d3, take, and I can take this bishop, right? Maybe rook b1. The idea is to go just queen to a4, though. I don't know. Something feels fishy. Something feels fishy here for black. But maybe it's all working. Maybe it is just working. Okay, worst case with the white pieces, I can defend my bishop or move it out of the threat of capture, something like bishop to c5. Then black is going to be posed with two problems, the threat to the bishop and the threat to the rooks, and can only solve both by playing bishop to c7. And then again, it's white on the move. And what can we do? Actually, queen b3, maybe this is such a good move, because I'm not sure how Alex is solving his problems. He was really relying on these tactical ideas to bail him out of hanging his e4 pawn, but if the tactics aren't working, then what else is there? What else is there for white? Let's see what Alex can come up with. Knight d2 hangs a bishop. Knight a5, queen a3 just looks no good. Just looks no good. Okay, knight a5, just queen e3 though. Queen a3 rather. Queen a3. The knight can come back to c4, but the black queen will jump into c5. And applause. Applause for 21 gigawatts. More applause for 21 gigawatts. The crowd goes wild for these tactics. Okay, knight back to c4 I thought was the idea, but again, queen c5. Very, very strong idea. So looking good now for 21. Oh, okay, knight to b7. Yeah, that one is not what you want to do. Knights don't belong to don't fianchetto your knights, everybody. Fianchetted knights not so good. They are very much hampered by the end of the board. You know, I can't go to I don't know, z6, the letter before a. I can't go to z8. I can't go to a9. I can't go to c9. I'm stuck with only 4 legal moves, and 3 of those moves are going to hang a knight here. So yeah, rook c7. Knight's just got to come back, and it just feels like you're losing some time with the white pieces. Okay, looking good for 21 gigawatts. He's in control here. In the meanwhile, what's going on in the rest of our match? We have Moneyballin and Fishers of Men drawing their game by agreement. Some sort of perpetual here. So Moneyballin not actually able to handle that weakness around the white king. That's the critical point I kept bringing up. This position, great for white with the bishops, but just a little bit of weakness around here, and black was able to use that. Again, by the way, bishop takes knight. Horrible, horrible move. Just don't give up your bishop for a knight like this, guys. Stop doing this. Your bishops are so strong, and to just trade it for free for a knight is probably what gave away a lot of the advantage here. And then, yeah, just a simple perpetual to draw that game. So Fishers of Men surviving that one despite definitely having a worse position. Okay, with that, let's check back in on board 1 here. We've got Kamikaze Knight and Vishal still duking it out. It looks like they actually drew their first game. Is that true? I think that is true. That seems like it's true. Okay, Bishop C5 is winning a queen. What? Oh, that's nasty. White was rolling down the board with these pawns, just completely killing it. In fact, has an extra exchange in the position. F6, and then sacrifice the bishop in stunning fashion, only to hang a queen. We joined at the right moment. That being said, white's position was so good to start with that he might still win this game. In fact, he might just be objectively better here, despite having a rook and a bishop for the queen. Yeah, in fact, how does black stop checkmate? Very scary stuff. Okay, d4, this is probably a good try for black, because you need to bring this queen out this way so your king can escape. But now, okay, rook g3 isn't played. I really expected rook g3 to come on the board now. But yeah, now I think something like maybe even queen a2, introducing ideas of checks and clearing an escape route for the king. That's what you need to survive here. You need to get this king out of the king's sight, where all of these white pieces are just swarming. This does allow f7, but now, okay, so king h7. And now simply queens, I guess, is the idea. And yeah, you know, the idea of trying to escape was nice, but this f7 move puts a stop to it, and queens should be good enough here. Good enough. If it's not checkmating immediately, it's at least winning a full rook, and then white will have a very nice endgame. So let's calculate. Queens, rook takes. Okay, bishop d2 is check. Not so sure this was necessary, though. Not so sure this was necessary. Yeah, now you still queen, and I think you kind of have to now. Otherwise, you run some serious risks. Is he considering rook f4, the idea of like checkmate or something? I don't know. I don't believe it. Just queen the pawn. Just queen the pawn. Don't be greedy. Okay, rook f6. And once again, the players are proving that they are very good at chess. King g7, bishop h6, king h7, bishop f8 is checkmate. So, wow. Kamikaze Knight proving me wrong, finding forced checkmate. Not just queening the pawn, finding better. Impressive stuff. Impressive stuff. And so, Kamikaze Knight takes out Vishal on board 1, giving Enterprise a lead. And with that, you know, I don't want to call it already, but it's looking very, very tough for Edward Jones to score enough points and to take that first place position away from Enterprise. They might already have secured it. That being said, Kamikaze Knight needs to see mate in 2 here. Can he find mate in 2? It's a pretty one. It's a pretty one. It's a little bit unusual, so understandable if he misses it. That being said, though, rook g3 not quite enough because I have king f8. You're still obviously winning with bishop h6 and queens, but bishop h6 is a bit better. Okay, we have this first. Check is the idea, I guess. It's not quite checkmate anymore, not by force at least, but obviously still quite good. Okay, now this one is checkmate. Okay, there you go. He found mate in 3 rather than the mate in 2, but this one far less beautiful, and I will never forgive him for it. That's okay, though. He gets the point for Enterprise. Let's check back in on Giustini Linguini versus Kenjalum. It's coming down to the wire here, both players in time pressure. White obviously with a winning position, but only 36 seconds to figure it out. Only 36 seconds. That being said, tough to play any legal moves here with black. Okay, we're going to see the knight or the bishop get sacrificed for these 2 pawns. And once again, one side has an extra rook. Last time it was Kenjalum with the extra rook, and he actually wasn't able to win. We'll see if Justini Linguini can succeed where Kenjalum could not. Yeah, knight d6, that's a good move. That's actually checkmate in 1 now. Justini gets it done. Okay, moving on. That is good news for Edward Jones. That is going to level the match with Enterprise. And then what's going on in Alex's game? It's again coming down to the wire. It looked tough for Alex just a moment ago, but it looks like things have improved drastically. We left it at knight a5. Knight d5 was the choice, but this just gives up your extra pawn. No need to do that. Simply take on d3, push through to e3. All of those moves were good. But yeah, now, okay, I take it all back. What black did was also pretty good. But then, hangs a queen and a rook. Back rank threats. Back rank threats, guys. That's what you got to look out for. And Alex gets it done with the back rank idea. Should go on to win this game. Yeah, black is quickly running out of pieces. There's some stalemate tricks, I guess, but nothing too crazy. I think king h2 is amazingly the fastest path to checkmate, just because you want to play, well, queen g4 if h6, and if king here, yeah, just king h2, and queen g4 is mate. Just have to waste a single tempo. Okay, g4 and queen f6, queen e7, queen h6, all checkmate in 1. Queen h6 for Alex, and that'll end the game. Okay, with that, Edward Jones is off to a lead in the match then. And yeah, somehow Justini Linguini against Kenjalum, we saw the first time I clicked on that game, we saw that it showed a point for Kenjalum already. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't think it was true. But could it be that Kenjalum won their first game in like a minute and a half and I just didn't see any of it? Because it's marked. It's marked on the pairing sheet that they've played both games. Maybe it's true. If that is true, it's all going to come down to the second game between Fishers of Men and Moneyballin and the second game between Alex and 21 Gigawatts. We have Enterprise with a 1-point lead at the moment. Edward Jones would have to win on both of these boards to win the match. And what's going on here? It looks like a rook endgame. And what is this decision? My God, Moneyballin. He could take the rook, have a fine endgame. Instead, he takes the pawn on b4, going down the exchange for a pawn. Not good. Not good. Rook c1, rook d7. Your pawns are toast, buddy. Your pawns are toast. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Bishop for a rook, that's good. Take it. Don't try to overpress like that. Yeah, king b8, rook d7, and your pawns are just going to fall one by one. Very tough stuff. Yes, you did lose the game. Oh, no. Sorry to hear that. Sorry to hear that. The good news is you got it done in round 2, and your team definitely has good chances to still win this match against Enterprise. Especially with Fishers of Men now, is taking a significant advantage in his second game against Moneyballin. Okay, rook c8, but this is no good. We get the f7 pawn. Then it's just a clean exchange for white. You can defend your g7 pawn like this, but king d3, my king is entering the position. Rook e7 immediately also picks up another pawn. It's impossible to defend both of these. e5 runs into rook g7. And yeah, rook e7 is Fishers of Men's choice. Okay. So with this, white picks up another pawn. Black is hoping on the b pawn to be the saving grace here. Wants to push this pawn, get it far down the board, and give white some trouble. But I don't think it's going to be good enough here. We've got rook takes e6 coming. Yeah, rook b6 is fine. Rook e4 is fine. Just any move is fine. And I do expect Fishers of Men to convert this position. Which brings us to Alex Kurford versus 21 Gigawatts with action early on in the opening already. What is this? What happened here? We had a French knight c3, c5, okay. Knight f6, e5, knight back to g8. Yeah, this is stuff that's beyond my understanding. I'm no French Sicilian line player. So yeah, knight f6, e5, knight g. Is this a real thing? This doesn't feel like a real thing. But let's see what happened anyways. We had a lot of back and forth in the opening. Eventually, black does break with d5, which feels very, very important. You just can't exist in this position with your pawn stuck here on d7. So d5 liberates things a little bit. Then we saw queen c7, which actually might allow knight b5, but this wasn't played. Instead, b4, and knight takes b4, taking advantage of the loose piece here on c4. Bishop b3 was played. Black retreats with the knight, and we just get a trade. Again, knight b5, probably a bit better. You want to get rid of that bishop. It's a good piece. It's a good piece. Seems to be the theme of tonight. Bishops for knights. That's what you want to do, and the players all seem to disagree with me at every turn. Now knight f4, and we see the power of this bishop supporting the other pieces as they advance. And yeah, couldn't have said it better myself to the music. That's how I feel with the white pieces here. Just you know what I mean. What's going on in the other matches, by the way? We have a perfect score for Worldwide Technology against Doherty. They won 6 out of 6. And for Ascension versus Bayer, what is going on there? It looks like another close match. Ascension is up by 1 heading into the last few games, but Bayer definitely capable of a comeback in that match. Okay, now Alex does have the extra pawn. It's this pawn here on e6 that's unopposed, and some pretty active pieces. You see b6, just going to bring this bishop out to b7 and highlight the fact that this knight and bishop are working well together. Because of that pressure, we see 21 Gigawatts commit to this move g3. Now this move does get rid of the knight, but it's only going to increase the power of this bishop once it lands on b7. Knight d3 is bowled by Alex, putting the knight on a square where it's not defended, but it's only temporary. This knight's headed back to c5, where it will be on a very, very strong outpost. Yeah, knight c5 it is. Now bishop b7, and this position is going from bad to worse for 21 Gigawatts here. Looks very, very tough. Checking back in on this endgame, Fishers of Men did end up converting it. Just don't stalemate the black king, and you will win this game. So let's stick with Alex then. This is the key match here. The key match, Alex versus 21 Gigawatts. We get bishop to b4, yeah, and bishop b7 is easy mode for Alex. You just pin this knight to the king. It becomes very, very difficult to keep this piece defended. Queen c6 as well is going to be coming on the board, and it's looking very, very tough. Looking very tough. We might see some simplifications here, but the sad truth of it is, even when pieces come off the board, this pin is going to be nearly impossible to break. For example, I'm looking at king g2, knight b3, queen b3, queen c6, or I'm sorry, bishop b4, a b4, queen c6, and you can't break this pin. Can't break this pin. That being said, I think that's all a little bit unnecessary. Oh yeah, and queen c6 first was my idea, I'm sorry. Queen c6, putting on this pressure, forces queen c3 or something awkward. Oh, and then actually just bishop e5. Ooh, bishop e5 at the end there. Queen takes, queen f3, queen g2 is mate. Yeah, things are bad. Things are real bad. Things are real bad. Check out this tactic. Oh my god. So if you go queen c3, I go bishop e5. Queen e3 is the only way to defend both pieces, and then I just go bishop d4. And after bishop d4, queen e2 is the only move you have, or queen f4 to defend the knight, and either one of those moves is going to drop your bishop on b3. Just inching up the board. Fearless, invincible bishop, and you're going to win the game. You can also throw in bishop takes rook, by the way. So those are the tactics for Alex here. Let's see if he can find any of them. Let's see if he can find them. He's got the time for it. 7 minutes on the clock. 7 minutes on the clock. In the meantime, Fishers of Men does find checkmate with the extra queen against Moneyballin. That brings us to a tied match with just this game remaining. Just the one game left to go. Wait a second. I'm just doing the math wrong. I'm just totally doing the math wrong. 21 Gigawatts needs to win this match, or needs to win this game to tie the match. Alex only needs a draw here, not a full win to win. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, queen c3, and Alex still waiting. I want to see bishop e5 on the board. Ooh, knight e4 instead. Okay, this move probably also wins, so I can't be too mad. Knight e4 is pretty good. The queen will move, and Alex's idea is to just play something like knight d2 or knight g5, add yet another attacker to this piece, and ask white what he's doing to solve the problems. That being said, after queen e3, knight g5, for example, there's bishop d1. I don't see the checkmate just yet, but obviously not going to be an ideal position for white, to say the least. By the way, g5, g4, not a ridiculous idea here. Not a ridiculous idea. Just brute force, add another attacker to that knight, and call it quits. Okay, queen d3 is played instead. Bishop b4, rook d8. Looks pretty reasonable. Rook d8 immediately, also very reasonable. This knight g5 idea, I'm honestly not so fond of, because after bishop d1, maybe white's holding on somehow. That being said, if you calculate a little bit, knight g5, bishop d1, bishop takes bishop, pawn takes, rook d8, queen moves out of the way, rook takes d1. Probably you're just checkmating there. But rook d8, also a very good move. Not going to spoil anything. Definitely not going to spoil anything there. In the meantime, we have some more results. We have Ascension now up by 2 games against Bayer. Bayer's going to have to win out to tie that match. We can check in on those games as well. We've got Vindy versus S. Gilmore here. Vindy with the extra piece. Looks like he might be able to score a point for Bayer. And that leaves us with Cross to PJ against Maurice GP. So Cross to PJ playing for Bayer with the white pieces here, hoping to win this drawn rook endgame. If he is able to do so, he will give his team good chances to tie the match against Bayer. Unfortunately for him, though, just a draw is not going to be enough here. With a draw, Ascension is going to secure victory against Bayer in this match. So down 4 minutes on the clock, not looking totally promising, but maybe he finds some tricks. Okay, after b6, if I'm Maurice GP and I know the match situation, I'm capturing that guy, I'm entering rook versus rook, and I'm agreeing to a draw. So looks like Ascension is going to be able to get it done, barring, somebody winning in rook versus rook. Meanwhile, how did the tactics go? Bishop takes on b4. We saw queen takes knight. An interesting idea, but it's not good enough. Rook d3 in the ends, and Alex is picking up this knight on f3. As I said, it's just nearly impossible to escape from that pin on the light squares when there's no pawns left to help defend. So Alex now can take the knight at his leisure. Takes with the rook. I probably would have taken with the bishop, gone rook d8, rook d1, traded off the rest of the pieces with the checkmating threats, and then just won with a bishop versus nothing. Instead, though, rook takes, allows king g1, and still an extra piece. Still an extra piece. Can't be too mad. Can't be too mad here. Rook over to c3 is going to pick up the c-pawn. Rook c7 would defend, but again, black's just going to be bringing in the rest of the pieces. Okay, rook e1. This does just drop the c-pawn now. Rook takes c4 seems fine. If you're Alex, the last thing you want to do is hang back rank checkmate somewhere, so at some point, it's probably a good idea to play h6, something like g5 or g6. Any of those moves is going to be good enough. Okay, bishop f3 instead. So Alex may be realizing his mistake, realizes that the bishop is going to be strong on f3. And yeah, rook e3, but this unfortunately hangs checkmate. And Alex, the hero for Edward Jones, goes 2-0 on board 4 to secure match victory against Enterprise. However, unless I did the math wrong, I think Enterprise scored just enough points to save their top seed position going into the Final Four. It's not going to matter a great deal, but definite bragging rights heading into the finals for Enterprise, along with that slight edge in tie breaks that I mentioned, where they would get to select their color in the event of an Armageddon playoff. And that leaves us with just one game remaining. And oh my god, we had a result in rook versus rook. Oh no. Okay, well, first of all, black missed the win earlier, but yeah, we see the rook actually falling. I didn't expect this to happen. I really didn't. But yeah, rook versus rook, not so good. Not so good. Yeah, this is like the one tactic that you can hang in rook versus rook, and unfortunately, it was hung. It was hung, and checkmate was delivered. Unfortunately for cross to PJ, you know, the result might have been decisive, but it was decisive in the wrong direction. So with that, Ascension secures match victory, and then Vindy actually just runs out of time. Had the extra piece, blundered the extra piece, and then ran out of time. So the worst has happened for Bayer in these last two games, and Ascension goes home with match victory in this game as well. So what has that done? Let us recap what has happened tonight. In round one, we saw Enterprise taking out their second place competitors, Worldwide Technology. That allowed Edward Jones to leapfrog Worldwide Technology with a win over Ascension. And Bayer does defeat Doherty on the third match. Then in round two, we see Edward Jones just barely beating Enterprise by a couple points, thanks to Alex Kurford on board 4. Maybe this is foreshadowing things to come in the Final Four next week. Maybe this is foreshadowing. Edward Jones and Enterprise, definitely the top 2 seeds going in. Meanwhile, Worldwide Technology proves that they belong in the Final Four as well, sweeping Doherty with 6 wins out of 6. And Ascension does defeat Bayer in the third match as well, also showing that they belong in this Final Four next week as well. So lots to look forward to next week. We will be doing the Final Four in person at the St. Louis Chess Club. So I look forward to getting all these players back here in the chess club to battle it out to win the fall season of the Corporate Chess League. Let's take one last look at the Grand Prix standings here. I believe these are accurate. We end with Enterprise at 246 points and Edward Jones ending just 2.5 points behind at 243.5. Worldwide Technology ends on 226 points, also very respectable, and Ascension also qualifying for the Final Four with 147. Bayer and Doherty both ending their seasons with 85 points and 38.5 points, respectively. And thank you to all of the teams who played in the Corporate Chess League here in the fall season. We've loved having all of you. I know it's been a little bit weird with a hybrid event and online events, and I'm glad we can end it in person back at the Chess Club. Big thank you especially to Bayer and Doherty, whose seasons are ending tonight. We hope to see you both back in the spring season of 2022. With that, once again, mark your calendars. Same time next week, next Thursday, Corporate Chess League Final Four. We will finally see who will reign supreme over the Corporate Chess League. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, my name is Caleb Denby, and I will see you next Thursday.